So, I'm excited to be here, I have to tell you. And when I first started coming here on Thursdays, it was one of the things that I really wanted to be able to do, would be to stand up here in front of a bunch of people and read some of my work. So some of you will know because some of you have been good enough to shell out a few bucks to buy my book. Some of you may not. I do have a chapbook that I'm peddling for the princely sum of $5 in the interval. If you haven't got one and you would like one, please do. There's no pressure. I'm not really a starving poet, but I haven't eaten today, so anything is welcome. So I started writing poetry a long time ago, and that's all I'm telling you. I was in college, and intermittently I've written a lot, chucked a lot away. I think I'm very harsh on myself. I'm my own worst critic. I chuck a lot of things away that I perhaps ought to have kept. I'm not one of those people who goes back and reworks. I remember last week's poet here was saying that she's a committed reworker of poetry. I can't do that. I believe more like the Impressionist painters who said that the first impression that they had was the real impression. I'm a bit like that with what I write. I write it down and I don't really tinker with it very much, and if it's okay, I keep it, and otherwise I'll chuck it away. But so far I've been the only arbiter of what's okay and what isn't, so we'll see about that. So anyway, I'm going to start with some from the book and some that are not, some that are older and some that are more recent. And this is one that I may not have read here before, I think. And it was about somebody's grandmother who I knew in England. It's called Track Marks. Sun and wind and rain have etched your face. More lines than the London Underground, you told me once. Each track tells a story as a smile spills in gentle rivulets from around your eyes. I'd call them laughter lines if you'd let me, but you always said nothing could be that funny. It only goes to show that every face would reveal a novel if only we could learn to read between the lines. So that one's in the book. This is also in the book. I used to live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'd drive along Highway 10 from here to there, or there to here, whatever, and you may have done that drive through the Sonoran Desert, and you often feel, Phoenix and Scottsdale, that sort of area, you often think if the desert really wanted to, it would take it back, and maybe it should. And there's something about the desert. People who live there will tell you, people who've been there will tell you there's something about it. It sort of snatches at you. I felt that. I still feel it. I go back there. I still feel that same, something that's sort of snatching at you. So there's something about the desert that I liked, something about it that, but it's almost like, it's almost, on the other hand, it's almost like electrocution. So you hold the electric wire, and that is, there's such a high current that you get muscle spasm, you can't let go. So it's a bit of that too. So this is called Sonoran Tone Poem, and it was in Phil's flyer. So it's about the Sonoran Desert. I have walked in dark places through time, where birds with black wings cast black shadows on black walls, peck at my eyes, remind me of their presence. I almost saw myself there once. When I was alone and the desert spoke its suffocating siren song of yearning, I tried to answer. Parched throat almost giving birth to words that might have formed a sentence to someone listening near the saguaro. I followed a wasted dream down the Agua Fria some time ago. Under the pitiless gaze of the endlessly clear sky, everything there ever was and is revealed as unadorned and bare, unlovely and broken, just as you have left me. So that was quite recent. I wrote that. This one I wrote quite a long time ago. It's called Imagine. It's also in the book. These are all in the book. It's page 19 if you want to read along. There used to be in England, there used to be a radio show, right? England, Radio 4, previously called the Home Service, darling terribly. Terribly, terribly. The announcers on the radio, right, would dress up in tuxes. This is what the BBC used to be. Oh, God, those times have gone. But, you know, they would dress in tuxes. And there used to be a show called Listen with Mother. I'm not saying I'm reminded of anything, obviously, but here we go.
How would you dress for that?
Yeah. Only you would know, John. And please, God, don't share. We have young people in. Okay, it's called Imagine. Small loopholes exist within reality somewhere inside my mind. Between troughs of depression lies a small ledge of calm. Let me rest on one for a while. As a physics teacher, if I could speak, as a physics teacher, you tend to get interested. I'm interested in things about time. I find time really fascinating as a topic, and because part of the way the universe is not what it appears. It's one of the things you learn in physics, that what you think isn't. And if you think this is the way things work, they don't. And if you think you know how things work, you probably don't. So, and time is one of those things. You know, you think time is stuff that happens equally, evenly, constantly. Well, it doesn't. So it turns out that the faster you move, the slower your time is going. So that's one odd thing. So, you know, and there are lots of other things. So time, I find time interesting. Would we know, for example, just think about it, would you know if time was going backwards? I mean, if it was going backwards for everybody, would you know? And if you would, how would you know? You know, what is it that tells you about the direction that time goes in? How do you know? So anyway, so these are a couple of things, a bit around some of that idea around what I think about time, or, you know, stuff, that sort of stuff, quirky stuff. So this is called schema. It's just a little thing. Mindful that in the greater scheme of things there may be no scheme, I embrace the totality of what is now. So that's one. Here's one. What else we got? Okay, here's one where so to me sometimes I'm not really sure what the present is. I'm not sure there is a present really. Is there? I don't know that there is. Seems to me that, you know, in a few minutes' time, or a few seconds' time, probably I'm going to be reading something. You know I am, I know I am, we know it's going to happen. So that's out there in the future somewhere. It hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen, and we're fairly sure it will. Then a few minutes ago, I read a poem. I read that little one, called it Schema. We read that. That's gone. You remember that. That's in your mind. That's in the past. That happened. But what happens now? There is no now, because as soon as there's a now, it's gone. So as soon as the future comes to inhabit what we call now, it's gone. So the only real thing, sometimes it seems to me, is the past. That may not be right, but it just seems like that. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's how it feels to me sometimes. So this is called river. Sometimes you find people talk about time as the river of time, because it's something that's constantly moving, or the arrow of time, because it has a direction. So this is called river. Time's march from past to future inhabits only briefly the present where I live, or thought I did. Tick-tock, tick-tock, and on to the next fleeting illusion of now. The future becomes the present soon enough, and then immediately populates the past, so that sometimes it feels like ago is all that is real. For now, secure in my memory. So I was thinking, same sort of thing. I'm thinking, well, everything's out there. It's all happened. Everything that's happened has happened. So what's the point? If I apologize for something I've done, it's meaningless, really, because I can't take anything back. I can't undo what I did. Whatever happened, happened. So I was thinking that, maybe this apology stuff that we do, what's that mean, really? Maybe it would be better not to do the bad thing in the first place, eh? So this is called contemplating apologia. Nothing that ever was said can be unsaid. Nothing that ever was heard can be unheard. No deed once done can be undone. Everything I ever saw indeed happened, and everything that has been exists forever in the past, wafting in and out of memory. So if you hurt me once, you have hurt me for all time. In the heat of the moment is not that, in fact. It is branded into memory, and the scar tissue, so carefully cultured, is leaf thin, merging tentatively with the other scars from before or tomorrow or whenever. My only reality is my past, as real only as my memory, but mine for all that. I care less for what you have said, more for what you have done, for it is what we do that defines us. And if you cannot show me what you feel about me, then you cannot feel for me. Okay, here's one. It's a bit like the last one in that it's sort of using a negative way of expressing a positive thing. So it's called just. Just because I have not spoken does not mean you have not been heard. Just because I know no answer does not mean I do not keep asking. Just because I've shed no tears does not mean I'm not crying. And just because you do not hear when I say I love you does not mean you are not loved. I don't have much else to say, I think. I think this is what I have to say, really. I don't have much else to say. Thank God you're here, Brad. No, anytime. No, I said no, nothing. Okay, so this is a thing. Where I lived in England, there was a ruined house, a stately home, that was destroyed by fire in like 1690, I think. It was a funny thing because this was a Tudor house, and the way these houses were structured was that they would build the kitchens apart from the rest of the house, because normally, in those days, the fire would start in the kitchen. So they figured, well, if a fire's going to start, we can lose the kitchen, damn it, the rest of the house will be fine. So guess where the fire started in this house? The only thing left was the kitchen. So these were the ruins. They were renowned ruins where I lived, and they were nice. So and it's just, I just mention it just because it's another story. It's a nice story. So this is called Remembering. Page 24. Page 24 in your primers, boys and girls, get there. So it's called Remembering. We were walking by the ruins just now, in the sunshine, I think, unless it rained. And then you were gone, and I saw the river swell above the parapet, and I walked on the path between the lakes where the dogs were until I reached the road. Now I'm driving, going nowhere special, and the car becomes a boat, and I'm fishing. So I know this isn't real anymore, because I hate fishing, and I can't catch anything anyway. Somewhere in the woods, damp and earthy smelling, is the pale scent of you on a rug, with wine and a kiss, and the green man lurks behind the tree watching us. I once walked this shoreline among Roman remains and shells alone, lost in the history of place and moment, stopping time for a while and then shuddering back to now as large boats glide past my view, impressively, carelessly, impassively to the North Sea. When you asked me if I loved you, I wonder how much different the world would now be if I'd said yes, or even I don't know. In much the same way as if you ask me how much these unbidden thoughts in my head are memories, or dreams, or some manipulation of imagination. I don't usually write haiku. Larry writes haiku. My mate Larry writes haiku, but I don't write many. And when I do, I tend not, I don't follow the rules really. The rules are, I do 5-7-5, but I try not to do 5-7-5 syllables, because that's quite hard. But sometimes I'll do 5-7-5 beats, or very loosely 5-7-5. So this one could be sort of a haiku if you stretch your imagination a bit. Page 12. I'm sorry, I'm naughty. It's called Silhouette. Image, uncertain in the half-light, standing between sea and sunset, caught between two desires. So, I don't do many pastoral ones, I think. I do one or two. I don't know what I do, really, lots of. Somebody, again, people who've come and read here in the past can define or describe what they write. Their poetry is this or that or not. And mine, I can't do that. Maybe somebody else could, but I can't. It really is what I think. And I find it's quite busy in here, really, is what I find. And I think a lot about a lot of things most of the time. So I'm driving to work. I lived in Ventura, so I drive down to Oak Park every day, drive back. At least in the morning I move on the freeway, and coming back I don't always move very quickly, but I have a lot of downtime, or sort of downtime. I think a lot. So I have ideas like these things are going around in my head a lot, all the time. And sometimes they stop long enough for me to catch them on paper, really. And that's what happens. So it's really a collection. What I'm trying to say is just a collection of what I'm thinking at any given moment. It's not me trying to write about pastoral things, about, the birds and the trees and how nice it is and the sunset and the sunrise. Sometimes I'll write about those things, but only if there's something that's happened that's made me think about it. Sometimes I'll write about whatever it is. I don't know. It doesn't matter. So I don't really know where any of it comes from. It just pops into my head and is round and round and round, and then it stops long enough to be put down somewhere is what happens. So this is a sort of pastorally thing. Page 10, dusk. Dusk. It's quite a recent one too. Pale shadows drift slowly, cool breeze ruffles tepid water, causes mild ripples on the lake. Sunshine eclipsed, vanished from the panorama, quiescent moonlit phosphorescence replaces. While all the time you are there at the evening, holding my heart in your hands. Dreamwalking. She awakens at night. It is dark. It's not in the book, sorry. Dreamwalking, not in the book. I love you. Dreamwalking. She awakens at night. It is dark. She does not know the noises she made before while sleeping. And she wonders why the dark is so quiet in her head even with him there breathing. He wanders in sleep from place to place, each less real than before, but always unexplained and tortuous. His convulsions no longer frighten her, and her moaning no longer intrudes on him, so that the dark only becomes another layer of shadow where the usual things happen. Until he too awakens to find it is all as dark and inexplicable and painful as when he was last in the darkness, in the daylight. Okay, my mother always used to say, bless her, that if I wanted to do something, it was a bit of a flight of fancy, a bit fanciful, she'd go, yeah, chance would be a fine thing. So that was nice. I felt encouraged. So I called this chance to be a fine thing. But I have to say that it was brought about by one of my colleagues. One of my colleagues was having a debate in her class about determinism and whatever the other thing is. What's the other thing? Free will. Free will. Determinism versus free will. And some of my students came into my room and they started arguing about that. They're going, Mr. Jones, what are you? What are you? Do you determinism? Are you free will? And of course, in science, by and large, stuff is pretty much random. Things happen randomly, or things happen governed by the laws of probability. So basically, things that have a high probability of happening happen a lot. And things that have got a low probability of happening don't happen. And that moved Einstein once to say, because he was developing this idea of statistical thermodynamics, which is basically a long-winded way of saying, if you put a hot thing in contact with a cold thing, we always notice the hot thing gets colder and the cold thing gets hotter. Why is that? Well, it only really happens because it's so much more likely to happen, actually. But it prompted Einstein to say that whatever this is, however much this brings us closer to the truth of the great one, I still don't think he plays dice with the universe, was what Einstein said. So I wrote this, chance would be a fine thing. So, rolling dice, random number generation 2 through 12. What does the I Ching say about this decision? Spin the wheel again, see where the needle points, follow the command to the letter, discover your fortune. Pick a card, any card, and I will tell you with absolute certainty what it means in the tarot and what is foretold for you. Know your star sign, your birth date and time, maybe your mother's state of mind, and know your future, the astrologic kind. In Alexandria, there was a library with all the truths of the ancient world within. Geometry, algebra, metaphysics in hieroglyphics, until the fire or earthquake or flood or wanton destruction took it down. Maybe everything that is known was known before. Maybe every possible roll of the dice happened before. Maybe God does play dice with the universe, and maybe we have no control. And it's just a thought that the feelings we brought to the notions we caught from the knowledge we sought, that we struggled and fought to learn from what we were taught, had simply no sort of link to the sport that is what life ought to be about. You think life just happens to you, one thing after another, like time. But the reality is, it's there all the time, like a flowing river, and you just happen to it. Thank you.